The moon, Earth's satellite. While the Earth revolves around the sun in a nearly circular orbit, the moon is orbiting Earth in the same way. Unlike the sun, the moon is a solid object that does not emit its own light. You only see the moon because light from the sun reflects off the surface of the moon into your eyes. The moon is able to revolve around the Earth due to the gravitational pull of Earth on the moon, and the moon will make one revolution around Earth every 27.3 days. The moon also rotates, and as it revolves around Earth, it completes rotation also in 27.3 days. This means the moon makes one rotation in the same amount of time that it makes one revolution around Earth. Because the moon makes one rotation for every revolution of Earth, the same side of the moon always faces Earth. As the moon revolves around Earth, the relative positions of the moon, Earth, and the sun change. These changing relative positions cause the phases of the moon, eclipses, and tides. When you see the moon in the sky, sometimes it appears round, other times it looks like half of a pizza, sometimes it's a thin sliver, and sometimes you don't see it at all. The different shapes of the moon you see from Earth are called phases, and the moon goes through its whole set of phases each time it makes a complete revolution around Earth. Phases are caused by changes in the relative position of the moon, Earth, and sun. Because sun lights the moon, half the moon is always in sunlight. However, since the moon revolves around the Earth, you see the moon from different angles. So the phase of the moon you see depends on how much of the sunlit side of the moon faces the Earth. The sequence of phases is called the lunar cycle, and one lunar cycle takes 29.5 days to complete. The cycle begins with the new moon, and when the moon is between Earth and sun, this is when you cannot see it. And this is because the sunlit side is facing away from Earth. Here you can see where the moon is between Earth and the sun in the new moon phase. We're going to go ahead and look at this diagram, and I'm going to continue to explain the other phases of the moon. During waxing phases, more of the moon's near side is lit each night. Week 1 is considered the first quarter, and as the lunar cycle begins, a sliver of light can be seen on the moon's western edge. By the end of the first week, the moon is at its first quarter phase. During the second week, more and more of the near side becomes lit, and at the end of week 2, it is at a full moon phase. During the waning phases, less of the moon's near side is lit each night, and as seen from the Earth, the lit part is now on the moon's eastern side. During week 3, the lit part of the moon becomes smaller until only the eastern half of the moon is lit, and this is the third quarter phase, which then heads into week 4, and during this week, less and less of the near side is lit, and at the end of week 4, we are now back to the new moon phase. Now, as the sun shines on the moon casts a shadow that extends out into space. Sometimes when Earth and the moon and the sun are lined up, the moon casts a shadow on Earth's surface, and this is called a solar eclipse. There can either be a total solar eclipse where the moon appears to cover the sun completely, or partial solar eclipses where the moon only covers part of the sun. Just like the moon, Earth also casts a shadow into space, and as the moon revolves around Earth, it sometimes moves into Earth's shadow. When this happens, a lunar eclipse occurs. During a lunar eclipse, you can still see the moon even when it's completely within Earth's shadow, but Earth is deflecting some sunlight, so that reflected light has a reddish color and gives the moon a reddish tint during a total lunar eclipse. Now, the surface of the moon was shaped early in its history when objects from space crashed into it. Most of the impacts formed moon craters more than 3.5 billion years ago. Earth was also hit by the same objects in space. However, on Earth we have wind and water and plate tectonics, and this erased the evidence of these craters, whereas the moon has no atmosphere, has no water or plate tectonics. So the same craters that formed billions of years ago have hardly changed. Now, the large dark flat areas on the moon are called maria. Maria formed when lava flowed up through the moon's crust and solidified. And when this lava solidified, it was dark and flat. The highlands are the oldest and most highly cratered regions of the moon. These areas were too high for the lava that formed the maria to reach. If you look at the moon through telescopes, you can see bright streaks around craters, and these are called rays. These rays are materials that blasted from the area that was formed by craters. All right, let's take a break there, and it's time for you to show what you know.